25, 30 years ago, we had hundreds of people in rooms entering in invoices from paper, and then they were scanned, and then they're doing it from images and now workflow. Now what we're doing is we're taking automation to the next level. The vision is being able to take complex sources of data from different places to do the reconciliations, to classify it correctly, to be able to run through a certain close management tool that's actually being generated from AI. That's where it's going. I think there's still a lot of folks out there in the industry that don't understand what the potential of CAS can become. As I reflect my interactions with my clients, there's just so much interaction and strategy. We just launched a very large client, and they're looking for the advice. They're looking for the consultation, and they're looking for us to tell stories with the data and the financial information. That's what's happening in the industry now for us.
I think Accounting Today reported that like a third of all new hires at public accounting firms right now are not CPAs. So it naturally does kind of change the org chart a bit, right?
I'm just going to make a generalization. I think there's more non-CPAs than CPAs in CAS practices. And being a CPA is great. It's really important, and we always look for that, but it's not a requirement.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.
Welcome to the AI Native Accounting Podcast, presented by Digits. I'm your host, Casey Johnson, principal at Be Radical, and today I'm joined by someone who sits right at the intersection of modern CAS delivery, firm leadership, and responsible innovation. Kane Polakoff is a partner and the CAS Practice Leader at CohnReznick, a top 20 firm. Now, Kane and I actually just saw each other and ran into each other in Dallas, where we were both speaking at the Ensuring Success Studios. Kane, welcome. It's great to see you again so soon, and I am thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. I hear the weather's a little bit nicer now where you're at versus where I am at. Right now, it's about 15 degrees out. So I'm looking forward to spending some time on the West Coast shortly.
Oh, we had an amazing weekend out on Coronado, and it was like 65 and sunny. I am not complaining about the weather right now. So last week, your session really stood out to me because it wasn't about the tools, it wasn't about the hype, but rather the ethics around AI use in accounting, which feels like exactly the right place for us to start today, because so much of the AI conversation is focused on efficiency rather than responsibility. So let's just hop right in. When you think about AI adoption inside a CAS practice, what are the ethical questions that leaders should be asking before they deploy those tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we've been talking about AI, I think it sounds like every week people are talking about AI, but ethics is definitely something in my mind that we should spend more time about, is, understanding the impact that it will have on our staff. I think that's one. Understanding kind of what the goals are and the expectations, and the transparency that'll happen not only for your internal staff, but for your clients. And I know there's a lot of discussions happening. Do we share we're using AI with our clients or not? When do we share that? How does that work? And then as you start the journey within a CAS practice, who do you involve? Do you bring the team up, from the very beginning of evaluating the type of partners that you would want to have, or do you just kind of get it all done and then you throw them into it? So there's a lot of different questions that are happening, from the practicality of it. One, we think we all know that there's a lot of benefits, but how does it impact? What is the quality of results that you'll provide? And there's many different things that you need to think about when you go through that today. And that's what makes it very interesting, because everybody's... Sorry, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, finish, please.
No, I was just going to say that it's, I think a lot of people want to jump in and just start getting to going and making it happen. But I think there's a lot of questions that you need to ask yourselves and your firm and your clients and your partners too, because it's not only the impact of your clients or your staff, but even your third-party providers too. So there's a lot of different aspects of discussions that you want to have as you start that journey going forward.
And you mentioned about the conversations with the clients. Are the clients asking, do you think that they even care, like if you're using AI or not?
Yeah, most of it's interesting when you think about in the last 6 months, when we go through our sales process, these are new prospects And part of the journey is they do ask those questions what is your tech stack? Are you using AI? What type of AI are you using? What is that impact for us? And it's not only just an ask from a price discount perspective, but to make sure that you're kind of going through that process in the right way. So we are, as we kind of take on our new clients and our existing clients, we're looking to bring our clients with us in the journey as we move forward, going forward. So.
And how do you approach with your team human judgment versus machine recommendations in your advisory services, especially when clients increasingly want faster answers, right?
So you have artificial intelligence and you have human intelligence, and you like to say, and both of them have to work together. And I like to say, whether it's when we talk about automation or going to the cloud, it was making sure, how do you make sure when things are not being done correctly? And I think when you look at the human judgment or intelligence of what AI provides, when you're looking to leverage AI to provide a certain function or feature, it is critical to have a human intelligence or judgment there as part of that reality. And in starting off, just like if you start with data entry 25, 30 years ago, you had all these folks that are doing data entry. You still had people validate that the data that you entered was correct. We had situations early on in my career where you had two people key information, then the system would compare it, and if there's a difference, then to make a decision, then move forward. So you have to have the right governance and the right structure in place. When you think about accounts payable and invoice processing too, is you're extracting information, you're using automation. I think I heard you were talking about OCR capture and different things like that. And that's one aspect, but now you're taking the information, you're using AI to make a certain judgment call. Well, you want to make sure that judgment call is of a certain threshold, a certain confidence level, the same thing that you would hear on whether it's an OCR capture. And so you want to have that layer of human judgment and intelligence that's helping to ensure that what we actually deliver to our clients is of the expectations that we have. So it even becomes more to be able to analyze and to understand. And if you look at one of the outcomes in CAS is a financial statement, but is everything tied together? Is everything classified correctly? Is everything reconciled? Are the work papers correct? Even though AI may be a big part of generating that for us in the future, we still need folks that understand that can challenge that can help ensure that what we deliver, because we are still accountable and responsible for that delivery, is given to our clients in the right manner. Otherwise, we are still at fault for providing poor information to them.
Right. And do you believe that firms need an explicit internal AI ethics policy now, or is good professional judgment still enough?
Well, we were talking to Becky, who was part of our panel, and there are some ethics documentation and checklists that now can be shared amongst our profession, and I think that will become even more important as AI takes on more and more of the features and functions and responsibilities of certain parts of our workflow. And so I think my recommendation is, yes, I think we all need to determine and understand how that becomes part of the fabric of what we provide going forward today.
So this ethical lens really kind of sets the stage for everything else that we're seeing in CAS right now, because growth without guardrails it rarely ends well, right? But now,
because the growth comes in and goes out the back door, right? So you don't want that to happen for sure. So
yeah, and we've seen CAS has been the profession's rocket ship for the past few years, right? We've seen tremendous growth in this practice area for the last at least 3-5 years. What are the biggest changes or tailwinds that you've seen in the last 18 months?
Well, the wind just keeps blowing. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I've been in the profession more or less for 30 years, and specifically CAS within the last 7 years. And I think that when you look at when you ask the question of tailwinds, the simple question and answer is there's just such a demand for it. And it's amazing. I mean, when you go through, I remember during COVID, it just was out of control of how much demand was in the marketplace. But when I talk to other of my CAS fellow leaders across the country, it's not 15, 20%, 25, 30%. And I still think it comes down to a couple of things. One is our our clients out there, our prospects out there are still having a hard time finding the right staff to support their efforts and to drive efficiency. And it's just not the people side of it. It's understanding what's the technology out there, how can it be leveraged, what is the tech stack that's going to drive from a general ledger to AP automation to expense management and so on, and then the automation of that, and now the AI. And when you look at CAS, that's what we do. It's our bread and butter. We have folks. We have a process. We have systems that can help and do it in a way. And when you look at 25, 30 years ago, it was all about cost savings, and especially when you use offshore, because we also we leverage offshore and global operations. But it's providing better value. It's getting the information quicker to our clients. It's to be able to deliver. And I think that is what I'm seeing when one client turns into two clients, it turns into five, and turns into 10, because the experiences that we are giving to our clients are game changing. I mean, there's nothing better than somebody coming and giving you a hug. And we're getting a lot of hugs these days. We want to keep those hugs. And but it's been fun. It's there's just so much tailwinds and so much opportunity. And it's from small clients, it's from medium-sized clients, it's from large clients too. It's all sizes. And what makes it fun, it's like a perfect storm. And but you're right, you don't want to be in a position where you're growing too fast and the quality of work that you deliver is not good. And that's why we talk about scalability and leveraging the technology and global operations to be able to forecast and project what's coming in the door, and making sure you have good retention and taking care of the existing clients that you have too.
Any kind of maturity bifurcation between clients who really understand and get the value of true CAS versus those that still think it's like, oh, they take care of the basic bookkeeping that we need?
Well, I think it's an education. So I think it's even within public accounting firms, there's still an education when you look at write-up work, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's really just a means to provide a tax return at the year end. And I think there's still a lot of folks out there in the industry that don't understand what the potential of CAS can become. And I think that as I reflect my interactions with my clients and my staff working with our clients too, there's just so much interaction and strategy. We just launched a very large client, and what we asked them, what's the definition of success? And it's not bookkeeping. It's not write-up work. They're not engaging us for that. They're engaging us for us because we have industry expertise within our team. So we have identified individuals that we brought into our team that understand the nuts and bolts of how a renewable energy client works, or how a hospitality client works, or a government contracting. And they're looking for the advice. They're looking for the consultation, and they're looking for us to tell stories with the data and the financial information. But it's more than just sending a bunch of financial statements over the fence and saying, here you go, figure it out. It's, they have high expectations of what we can deliver and what we can help them with. And so that is a lot different than, hey, we're just doing, basic, bookkeeping. That is a means to an end from the standpoint of having to do that. But it's once you get that done, we're going to be spending more time on having those conversations, because of the technology and the improvements in the industry is allowing us to hire people that have those skills that can spend more time than spending 15 days trying to close the books, where the books are closed quickly. That's the easy part now. The hard part now is to meet with the clients and kind of talk about, well, what's next and what happened last month and where are we going? That's what's happening in the industry now for us.
You brought up a good point about education, and it's even needed in the profession and with the practitioners themselves, not just with the clients. You are one of the, biggest advocates and voices, and you're out there doing a lot of public speaking. And I know that you're very active in some different CAS groups. Where do you go to learn what's the latest with CAS and which tech to find out about? I mean, you're leading a lot of these conversations. So where are you learning it from?
Well, I'll start off where I started. So 7 years ago, I was in BPO before. I didn't know what the word CAS meant, and how did I learn that? And I would think hopefully what's so amazing about this industry is the collaboration and the openness to share ideas, thoughts, failures, recommendations. And when I started my journey in CAS, meeting with some of the key leaders and sitting down and I was trying to determine, well, what tech stack should I use? What is the technology that's out there? And I would have conversations with leaders and practitioners, and you should look at this, and this is why you should look at that. And then here's somebody from a technology partner you can go talk to and meet with them. And so that was from kind of like the grassroots side. And I think as I look at where I am today, 7 years later, a lot of that still we have great conferences that we go to quite a bit to spend time, but I do a lot of that. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of listening, but I do a lot of interacting with people and looking and trying to understand different how people think and other practitioners what they're doing. And so it's a lot of one-on-ones like we're doing here and having conversations and really trying to understand where things are going. Like when you think of AI, 3 years ago, we were all talking about it, but it really wasn't being deployed yet not from a chat GPT or a Copilot perspective, but from integrating deeply into workflow, categorization, and helping to drive journal entries and that process. But over the 3 years, I've been able to spend time with a lot of the technology partners and the innovators in the industry and getting a sense of where things are going. And that education is what it's more hands-on, I guess, because the book hasn't been written in a lot of cases for a lot of what we're doing, but having those conversations and just being very inquisitive has helped me to be where I am today. And I recommend others to do the same. There's so many folks, you send an email out and asking a question, we'll respond, we'll get on the phone, we'll talk. I mean, I want CAS to really grow to the point where we have tax audit and CAS. I mean, today we're far from that. And I know the journey we're still kind of climbing that mountain, but I want to get to that point where it is just a big part of all organizations, because I think it's going to really change from an integration, from having different work streams to bringing in new business. It's very sticky. It allows, we're meeting with our clients daily and we're listening to their needs and helping to bring other opportunities to them. And, I think that, CAS is definitely going to continue to be the future and continue to grow in the right way.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about how much you guys share and are there for each other. I remember about 18 months ago when I was at CPA.com, we got together and I believe you were at the meeting. It was like the advisory practice leads at the top 25 firms. We did it at MFG. And I remember one of the conversations was about the problem of this still old school mentality in the firms where like, let's say a tax partner would be like, no, that's my client. They wouldn't look at it as a firm client. Do you find that profession wide, we're still having that issue? So it's difficult to sell advisory services into existing firm clients?
Well, I think I call the rules of engagement, right? And I think there's still challenges and there's a long ways to go for improvement. I'm being nice and responding to your question, but I think that the ownership of clients, need to be shared and they need to be understood. And it's a culturally, I mean, you think about, especially on the tax and insurance side, which I love tax and insurance, first of all, but I think that they've had clients for 20, 30 years. Yeah. And there's always a risk. Hey, if I bring in something new into my relationship, what happens if it doesn't go well? What happens if my client's not happy? What happens if, this happens? So I think that, that is definitely something that it's an education. The good things that have happened where we have now clients that there's different work streams where we have, for one client, there's a tax partner and we have evaluation, we have CAS, we have an enterprise applications. And these are I think that's the future of where we want to go as a public accounting firm, is that we're able to provide the right services. And there may be services outside of the firm that we have to make recommendations to legal or whatever that may be. And, I think that not everybody's still at that point. And even within my organization, I think every year we get better, but I think it's going to just take time and comfort and to have that track record to be able for people to feel comfortable that it's okay to do that. And if you have the right governance, you have project management in place. But the thing is, if you don't do that, I think some of these clients will leave and go somewhere else because they're going to expect that in the future regardless.
Exactly. Yeah. And everybody's trying to steer the ship in the same direction and together. But I guess there's just so much fear that, oh, you guys are going to piss off my client and mess up my relationship with them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's always the hardest thing is that, and I think the other thing is different from CAS. We're in operations, so in operations, things happen. Things are not going to be perfect, and is knowing that if I've had situations where we've implemented a large client that's a tax client, and there were some issues that happened, and to be able to address those, I mean, that it will happen, and to make sure that the partner is part of that process and understands what happened. But I've had situations also in the past where the partner just didn't understand, and it wasn't a good. They just felt it wasn't right, and they tried to shut it down. So that is going to continue to be a challenge, I think. But that's like in any firm when you have all these mergers and acquisitions. When there's different groups that are trying to service one client, you hear cross selling and upselling. That's always what everybody wants to do. But the hard part is the dynamics that comes with that, and whose relationship it is. Who do you need to escalate to? What happens if something's wrong? And so there's a lot of things you have to take into consideration of that dynamics, and it's not easy. And I think that's where being very proactive and transparent and how we over communicate is such an important thing in what we do from a CAS perspective.
Sure. And you mentioned earlier about like COVID and how things changed for CAS practices during that. And I truly believe because the clients were so lost and PPP and everything else going on, it did change a lot of the conversations and helped to spur some of the already trending growth that was happening in CAS. But I saw recently that the World Uncertainty Index is higher than it's ever been, like actually higher than COVID. Are you getting client questions around, or where are you seeing the most uncertainty for clients right now? Are you seeing an uptick because of this unrest?
Well, it's interesting because in CAS, there's not whether there's uncertainty or COVID, and there always seems to be a demand, or if there's if the economy's struggling, there always seems to be a need for what we have. I haven't seen much difference with the uncertainty. I can tell you from which is different than where it was 15, 20 years ago is global operations, where if you work with clients and they're asking about where you do the work and how that plays into consideration, where 15, 20 years ago, using global operations isn't the same comfort that they have today. So the uncertainty of global unrest, I guess, if you'll say it, they do ask what locations and what geos you're doing it, and they do have some concerns if it's in places that there's wars or things unfortunate that are happening. But from a business standpoint, there really hasn't been a big change in the demand that I've seen, especially in the last 5 years.
Right. Now, CAS is obviously uniquely positioned to benefit from AI because the work is very rule-based, repeatable, insight-heavy. How are you approaching AI within CohnReznick's CAS tech stack?
Yeah, so I like to say there's two aspects of AI. One is the documentation, the SOPs, the emails. You can do a LinkedIn post, right? So using Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT. So we have in the last year continued to enhance our capability in Copilot on doing the emails and making sure that we're helping to generate SOPs. And when we meet with clients, you do the transcription on whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever that may be. So I think the adoption on that it has saved a lot of time from an administrative perspective. So that is something I think most firms are moving towards those. And really, it's only been, when you think about it, it's been only about a year. So that we've been in case. Of course, you go to a college campus and you see all the kids on all that and things like that. But for the integration, so when you look at it on the other side, where it's workflow, dynamic close management, doing class characterization, helping to actually make recommendations on journal entries. We've taken the last 6 months to really evaluate different AI providers and to determine, based on our needs. We are broken down by many different verticals, and we handle larger clients. Typically, that's kind of our focus. So we're in the process of just evaluating that, which we will be deploying next year. We're going to start probably with a handful of clients first quarter next year, but really looking to go by the end of next year to have AI deployed for all that, or as far as we can go. Now, we can be ambitious and, time is important, but I rather do it right. So what we're trying to do is kind of slow play it. We've educated our staff. We've talked about it, with our organization. We're having conversations and how some of the staff at all levels can be part of the journey, because I think from a change management perspective, it'll help benefit us even more to when we do deploy it. So we're still at the very beginning of the journey, but I looked at it 3 years ago and it wasn't really there. The use cases, there's still a lot of R&D and a lot of work. And then even 2 years ago, but in the last probably 2-3 months, I've seen a pretty big breakthrough in the technology and how it works. And it's fitting into the model of what CAS provides today. I know AI is being used for a lot of other industries, but it's been great. So
I do see with a lot of firms, they've got like this FOMO. They think that they're so behind. And so it's like, we've got to implement AI. So I like the more methodical approach and identifying like, okay, what is the problem we're trying to solve? When you mention about 3 years ago looking at it versus today, obviously things are maturing. It's getting much more accurate. So if you thought about like the Gartner hype cycle and where things kind of sit, do you feel like you guys wait until things have matured a bit and maybe you're not an early adopter, but you're not like a late adopter or a laggard either? Like, where do you like to sit on that?
yeah, so the thing was that we were so busy building our practice
Mhm.
that to even put the basic building blocks of the tech stack and the verticals of global operations, and you think of all that was done, it took a lot of time. And I just knew that we didn't have the bandwidth or capacity or even being ready to take on that kind of endeavor.
Mhm.
So being an early adopter, I knew wouldn't be possible just because of where my journey is in our practice, which it'll be actually 3 years in January. We've been up and running. So it's for some of the practices that may have been around for 10 or 15 years, maybe they haven't. I know some of them have been doing that and doing a lot of the R&D, and that's where I have conversations with them. So I think I'm kind of in the middle. I think that there's still, I think there's questions on scalability. There's questions about quality. There's questions about enhancements and change management, and those are all very, very big things. And I just want to make sure when I do incorporate that into our tech stack, that it's going to be 1 + 1 = 4, not 1 + 1 = 0. And I think that we're still kind of on that verge. There's still a lot of let's try this or try that, and there's still some teething pains and some challenges. But I think for all those tech partners out there right now that are doing AI, the good news is we're almost right where everybody wants to jump in. When I was out there with you and I was out in DC, we were all talking about the same thing. And I think everybody is pretty much at the same place. There's folks that have looked to build it within their own public accounting firm. There's some that use third parties. But I think everybody's getting to that point where we're almost there, but we're right at the edge. So, but if you go all in, you want to make sure it's not going to ruin everything that you have. So you have to find that balancing right now. And it's interesting because you think about what it could become and how it will become. I mean, this is the worst that AI will be in our lifetime. When you think about it, it's only going to get better. But it's how does that impact your culture, your staff, and then how are you going to hire interns go in the future? How are you going to bring in people and upskill them? How are they going to fit into that picture? So it's really redefining our org structure too, and in our global operations. So there's a lot of things that I think about at night, and I challenge myself, but I want to make sure when we do deploy it, we're ready for it. And actually the AI is ready for us too.
And you've brought up change management a few times, and I'm sure with such a large firm, it's so critical to your operations. But I'm curious, when you put on your futurist hat, what do you believe, thinking about that change management, will fundamentally change about CAS delivery? And how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all talking about that. Maybe I'm going to play the lotto after this conversation, but I mean, I think as looking in the future, I mean, there always the vision was you think about doing a bank reconciliation or integrating things together and tying up a financial statement. I think we've all wanted to be in a position that it could be done as systematically as possible. And I'll use an example of accounts payable invoice processing. 25, 30 years ago, we had hundreds of people in rooms entering in invoices from paper. And then they were scanned, and then they're doing it from images and now workflow. And now we have cases where you can do straight through processing, where you can actually scan an invoice, OCR it, and actually read the vendor master file systematically, and then general ledger code based on certain information, and then export a file into a system with proper approvals without it touching anybody. And that's all done systematically through automation. Now what we're doing is we're taking automation to the next level. Is, the vision is being able to take complex sources of data from different places to do the reconciliations, to classify it correctly, to be able to run through a certain close management tool that's actually being generated from AI, and then actually posting that information into the system through a journal entry. That's where it's going. But you still need to understand the constructs of how that happens if you're an accountant, because it's even more important for you to understand why and what it's doing. So when you review it, you can help make those determinations. But that's what's going to happen. It's going to reduce the manual interaction of pulling information, of putting things over there. And it's going to allow you to actually sit and look at the end result of that. But you really need to understand how it got there in the first place. And then that's what we need to think about from a change management, which is a lot different where, hey, Sally or Mark or John or whoever, come in as an intern. We're going to put you on this QuickBooks Online. We're going to have you do the bank reconciliation. We're going to do credit cards. We're going to help you create the financial statements. So what happens if that's all done for you today? How are you going to train that from a change management to train the new staff to be able to validate what the system is doing is actually correct? And that's where we're starting to think about how that's going to play. It's going to change the rules of what we do today. And that may not change in the next 2 months. But if you and I are talking again in the next 2 years, there'll be a big difference there for sure.
When I think is this embedded finance is everywhere, and I think it's going to really change client expectations. I mean, when you think about if the clients are getting the numbers and the data directly from the apps before the firm can ever pick up the phone, that changes a bit of the expectations from the client as well as the relationship, right?
Well, but it's not only the financial information we're talking about, but then you're opening it up, and we haven't talked about security too, and sources of data. If it's a healthcare client, it's at HIPAA. If it's a credit cards, it's a PCI compliance. And you're pulling operational data. Now you're pulling HR information, and then you're putting it all together in this robust dashboard that simplifies it onto one page that makes a recommendation to a CEO. Here's everything you need. Here's all the KPIs based on where you're at. And then they make that decision of what that person needs to buy, sell, cut costs, grow, anything based on that information. That's pretty powerful. And I think that's going to happen in the future. And you see the results of the data, but what does that data really mean? So I think that's where the analysis and the strategic thinking and and being very analytical is going to play even more into what we do today as a CAS practice. And it's a little scary, but it's also pretty exciting to know what potentially can be done, and where we are heading I won't call it CAS 2.0, it's maybe CAS 10.0. But when we get to that point, it's going to be a different types of conversation for sure.
So does that change the skills that both you are intentionally developing in yourself, but also that you're focused on for your teams and developing in them?
Yeah, so that's always something that we talk about, bringing engineers and mathematicians. I think it's almost more important that you have strong accountants that understand how accounting works, theoretically and actually. And I was always thinking about maybe there'll be a couple workstations where you have to do it the old-fashioned way, and so then you understand how the new way is being done. But I think that'll continue to be very important. But I think being more strategic thinkers, there's no more, you can't be afraid to speak or interact or convey or handle tough situations. It's going to be even more important for folks to be able to have that that client relationship experience to be able to have the interaction, have communication, how to portray. And those may not be accountants, not all of them. They could be in many different fields. And I think it'll be a mix. We have hardcore technicians that have a technology background, but also do accounting in our software solutions team. And they're able to kind of understand what it takes to, when they deploy the technology, they can put themselves in what an accountant thinks. And I think it's the same thing as you'll have different skill sets where if you're going to talk to a CEO or a CFO, you want to be able to articulate that and to explain and to be able to have those conversations. And it may not be an accountant doing that.
Well, I think Accounting Today reported that like a third of all new hires at public accounting firms right now are not CPAs. So it naturally does kind of change the org chart a bit, right?
Yeah, well, within CAS, and I'm just going to make a generalization, I think there's more non-CPAs than CPAs in CAS practices.
Sure.
So, and being a CPA is great. It's really important, and we always look for that, but it's not a requirement.
Sure. Are there any AI capabilities that you've seen recently that genuinely excite you, that you're like, okay, this isn't just hype. This is going to be a use case that we're going to get some real traction with?
The categorization of data and actually posting on a journal entry.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we were watering. I had my popcorn and I was drooling, and then the dynamic close to be able to actually generate on the fly a close process that's done by AI and managed and monitored by AI. Oh, fascinating how that can be. And then on top of that, to take all that information and generate work papers systematically with explanations of those work papers to help support what was being done. I saw that live.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Absolutely. It is exciting. And I do believe that when you look across multiple different industries, especially in professions, I do think that the tech has matured much faster in accounting and finance than other industries. So,
Right, and I think not only in CAS, but I was talking to some of the colleagues in audit. This is some of the technology that's happening and some of the changes that I'm hearing, and not just in CAS. This just seems to be a time where everybody's kind of reassessing technology they've had in place for 20 years, and now they're saying, all right, now it's time to make that investment. And that's the fun part. It's for me, it's exciting to know that there's new companies out there, there's new technology, and it's going to help benefit us. And it's time to embrace it. And it changes here. It's not something, well, I'm going to just wait, and I'm going to wait a couple of years. I'm going to wait 4 years. I'm going to wait 10 years. I think we're all in a place now that we have to embrace it, but we need to make sure we use it in the right way, for sure.
absolutely. If you had a magic wand that you could wave and solve one issue, whether it be a bottleneck for CAS practice or a systemic issue like firm wide or with clients, what would it be?
Wow, a magic wand. I think it's the cleanup process. I think a lot of what we inherited are messes. I mean, most clients come to us not because they're pretty and things are perfect, but things are a mess. So it's be able to take disparate systems that are archaic and 2 years of a complete mess, and to be able to flip a switch and just make it perfect, because that's where a lot of the hard work goes into in time, and to be what we call cleanup work. That's some of the most challenging work that we come across, and to be able to come up with a solution to address that in a much more meaningful way, because a lot of it's done manually. And I think that's an area that we need to figure out, how do we improve. Doing the work going forward with a new tech stack or starting a new company and putting that in place is easy, but to be able to take that information from a new client and fix the past and then also move forward is the challenge.
Do you see CAS becoming the de facto operating system for SMB finance?
Well, it kind of is a little bit. I mean, the technology is. I think you can argue the technology is today. It's just whether a CAS provider is providing the service. So I think that there's still a lot of companies out there that use the CAS technology stack, but a CAS provider is not providing that service. It's just a pure tech. And we have some clients that we just implement technology for, and that works fine. But I think that there will be more and more companies, I think, that would leverage CAS providers because of the knowledge and the support, and to be able to do it more efficiently. So I think that's a potential in the option, but there are still a lot of folks out there who like to do it themselves, which is fine. So it's up to what they feel is right for them.
So I always like to do a lightning round where we get to know you a little bit better personally. Is there an AI tool that you're obsessed with, that not professionally, but just personally, that you can't imagine living without right now?
Well, Copilot is what I have fun with. So
Okay.
that's the AI tool that I play with, and trying to continue to enhance. It's amazing what it can do, from images to, it could write a book for myself, but then we can get into copywriting infringements and stuff another time. But Copilot is something that I've enjoyed, especially in the last year.
And you mentioned that you read a lot. What are you reading or listening to these days?
Just all different types of podcasts. I read Accounting Today. I go out and CPA Practice Advisor, and anybody sends me things. I need to spend more time on books. That's one thing that it's going to be my New Year's resolution. So if you have any good books, let me know. But a lot of them are just articles on what's happening in the industry than anything more than that. But I need to find time to just, not a digital book. I want to have my own book that I can open the pages and actually read. So that's on my list.
Excellent. And if CAS was an emoji, which one would it be?
Well, so within our CohnReznick CAS practice, kicking CAS is always the term that I like to use. So you think of the crane technique from Karate Kid, with somebody who has put their knee up and like kicking. So that's kind of the emoji. The kicking CAS emoji would be what I would use. So.
Ah, Danielson. Yes, that's great. Well, Kane, thank you so much for joining me and for grounding this conversation, not just in growth in tech, but in ethics and leadership and responsibility. I know the audience is going to take a lot away from this conversation. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time and the opportunity.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. This is our final episode of 2025, and I want to wish you all a very happy holiday season. I am incredibly grateful for this community and the conversations that we get to have here. A big thank you to Digits for making this podcast possible. If you're exploring what it means to become an AI native firm, check them out at digits.com. You can stream all of the AI Native Accounting podcast episodes on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast platforms. And we even offer CPE via Earmark. Until next time, stay curious, stay ahead, and cheers to 2026.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.